shows you how many people would use an open source program. And many of them will not be aware of it, and they will use it because it's free or because it's easy to download. Or it's really important as a project. Just 10th anniversary. That's really the big news. I'm pretty surprised you knew about the new release, but you didn't say anything about the birthday of the project. So
yeah.
yeah.
Yes, I'm very. As I was explaining to Roy just before we started recording. We usually have a 2-3 minute chat just to say hello and how are you type thing. I've been away from my house for the last week or so because we've been painting, and subsequently the fumeless paint that I bought from the local DIY shop wasn't so fumeless. And we've had to move out and go over to my parents for on and off for the last few days. So I had to apologise to Roy before we started the show in case I burst into a fit of sneezing, which I'm still liable to do because the paint fumes are very, very strong here. But no, I haven't actually didn't notice that, to be fair. If we're going to stick just very, very briefly on the main news and something that I was watching one of the local news reports in the last couple of days. Now, something caught my eye. It was some sort of press interview with Hillary Clinton, and she was mentioning about the actions in Egypt about the cutting off of the internet. And I can't remember what words were said or in the context, but she was making some reference to it being a very bad show, to cut somebody's internet, to cut the internet off and silence the public, as it were. And I'm looking at a lot of reports from Torrent Freak mainly because they seem to be very much on top of this whole story, but from Homeland Security in America, who seem to think censorship is bad when Egypt cuts off its citizens from the internet and stops them from talking to the outside world, yet seems to have no problem with taking away domain names without any type of trial or any type of case or chance for people to defend themselves.
They took down over did you read about over 80,000 of them being removed by accident?
Yeah, and allegedly. And I think it's absolutely outrageous. It seems to me, when you're looking at America, that if another country does something like this, it's censorship and it's bad. But when America does it, it's okay, and it's in their own interest. And I can't see what legal standing they have to do what they're doing. I'm following the reports on Torrent Freak, and they're very good at covering this story, and they're covering it in much more depth than we are sort of mentioning in this discussion. But I just can't see how they have the legal standing to literally...
There is a challenge from a person, I couldn't tell you his name now. I think his first name is Ray. A certain person is trying to challenge what they do now, and he's a very sane analysis, just trying to say this is not legal, and he shows them he actually tries to give them an analysis that's based on the Constitution or based on all kinds of laws, and say, well, you cannot do this type of thing. But the funny thing is, he's the only person who seems to be doing anything about it. Everyone else is completely silent, and this is just going on, and nobody even denounces that, except for sites like Torrent Freak, which would go more vocal and try to explain to people the hypocrisy in this case. By the way, it's not the only case of hypocrisy. If we go beyond software, there is the case of Ray McGovern being pushed back for silently protesting in front of Hillary, not actually saying anything or doing anything, and he's been pushed back. The guy's like 70, and he's been injured after the attack on him by the guards, and this is basically because he was trying to support WikiLeaks, which promotes, of course, transparency of the internet, which the United States doesn't quite seem to like. They talk about how they should spread documentation and be very transparent and everything else, but as soon as some stuff comes out, they get very, very panicky about it. So I'm quite encouraged to see lots of people become more skeptical and look at the situation and say, well, we do need to think about the statements being made within the context of the global community. Now you have the situation, I'm not sure if you followed what happens in Libya now, is they cut off the internet and then they start going around shooting people, even from helicopters and things, because they know the journalists have gone away and maybe some of them have been assassinated, and you can barely get any signal out of the country. In Egypt, you still have some infrastructure. All kinds of companies like Google and IBM actually have some presence there, so people will be capable of giving you fax access and things like that. With Libya, it's really hard to know anything about what's going on the internet, and people come to rely on the internet for any communication that they make. So going back to phone or to other means or using a modem is really difficult to do now.
It,
That's
I mean, it could well be a decent reason to bring back the old dial-up BBS, which is I saw that mentioned. I can't remember who mentioned it now, but it was talking about information exchange and when things happen, like the internet's cut off, and how information gets out, and it's certainly a very valid modern day usage of the bulletin board service system. So that was just one thing and when I saw the interview that Hillary Clinton was giving, it to me just stunk of hypocrisy, because whilst there may be some merit, and I don't want to go into individual cases in these websites because I don't have the lists, but while there may be some merit in what they did, there may not be. There's been no court case, no chance for a person to have their voice heard, and these sites have been taken away by the Homeland
This is even
Security.
worse. Than previously, one of the cases of a site being removed was a Spanish site. So, of course, people assume that's an American site. These are American sites because they might be in the TLDs in the United States. But one of them was a Spanish site, which only shortly before it was taken off the internet by this CCOYA or whatever it's, I can't remember the acronym. It was basically taken down by the United States government shortly after the court has authorized and has actually verified that this site was doing something absolutely illegal. And this is really, it just shows you that even the judgment of other countries don't count. So they have complete power, and they don't respect in this case, the court's judgment. And any website can even be proven innocent in court. And of course, what we're talking about here are things that basically might track a torrent. Of course, you can verify that the torrents are legitimate and not copyright infringements, and just offer people a service and be proven to be, eliminating once people file complaints. You eliminate the illegal stuff and you just give the service. They try to stigmatize the torrent sites in general and also create a certain chill, so you know that your website may not even get a chance to defend itself. If you're on a very successful torrent site, at any point you can just be disconnected. And for what? Even if you follow all the rules, just based on someone's allegation, somebody saying you are a pirate, and throwing away your site, and you have no chance to even say anything in return, say anything in your defense. It's been happening, and that's it.
Also, I mean, staying on that whole subject, there's also reports coming out now. Hotfile, the data locker, for want of a better word, is now clamping down on alleged copyright infringement by deleting accounts, etc., etc. What worries me is that these people, whilst there may be some merit, again, I don't know the cases, and I'm sure Roy is in the same position as me. We don't know the full ins and outs of the cases, but the problem that I have with the whole scenario of deleting on a whim these accounts that allegedly infringe copyright is that there's no opportunity for somebody to fight their cause. Now, we've often had discussions about storing your data on the cloud and how secure is your data. And the worrying thing here is that because a lot of these accounts, especially in relation to Hotfile, are just being deleted without any chance of defending a case or showing proof or providing evidence, it means that if your data is stored on the cloud, or in this case Hotfile, and they deem it to be an infringement of copyright, there's no second chance, there's no time to explain, it's deleted. And that is a worrying thing, and I think that does maybe highlight one of the dangers of trusting your data to the cloud. I've certainly been a supporter of the cloud. I know Roy is different in his opinions, but I certainly had been a supporter of the cloud until this sort of report comes through, and then you think, well, without any type of trial or without any chance to get your voice heard, and this happens, maybe it's not such a good idea at all, and we should be storing our data locally and keeping hold of our data ourselves. So it was just an observation that I had.
Yeah, I had some bad experiences myself. In some cases, when I talk about the cloud, typically I call it fog computing personally. I'm trying to associate it with fog instead of a cloud. But when people talk about the cloud, they usually talk about a service that's being used to store your files, and that's about it. But every time you use a web service where you input some data and you share some data in a web form type thing, so it can be things like highlights, and I like this, or I write some post and I write some tweet here and there. The stuff is not there in your outbox, in the mail program. It's not actually on your disk. It's there somewhere out there in the cloud, you're supposed to think. What happens is these sites, they sometimes delete things but sometimes the whole website disappears. So one website where I submitted over 20,000 submissions, basically, of news and stuff, basically decided, well, we don't